The great hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as the holographic display showed another exploration ship breaking apart in XO3's violent atmosphere. The ship's final transmission showed flashes of lightning larger than cities, followed by static. No one spoke as the recording ended. It was the third team they had lost this month. High Counselor Dan, a tall being with silver skin, turned away from the display. His four eyes blinked slowly as he faced the gathered representatives of 17 advanced civilizations. "We have lost another Beta-class exploration vessel," he said. His voice echoed through the chamber, along with all hands aboard. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their species had mastered faster-than-light travel, created artificial intelligence that could reshape planets, and solved the mysteries of quantum mechanics. Yet this one planet, barely twice the size of Earth, had defeated them all. "The rare elements we detected on XO3 are crucial," spoke Representative Max of the Mining Federation. His rocky skin crackled as he moved. "Without them, our faster-than-light drives will become useless within 50 years. We must find a way to reach the surface." The council chamber erupted in worried whispers. The loss of faster-than-light travel would cripple their civilization. Trade would stop. Colonies would be cut off. The golden age of galactic peace would end. "Perhaps," said a quiet voice from the back, "we are approaching this wrong." All eyes turned to Ambassador Lee, the human representative. He stood up, his simple blue uniform standing out among the elaborate robes and environmental suits of the other species. The human was small compared to most council members, but something in his steady gaze made them listen. "We've tried sending our most advanced ships," Lee continued, "vessels with AI pilots, energy shields, and quantum stabilizers. But what if that's our mistake? What if we need a different approach?" High Counselor Dan leaned forward. "Explain." Lee walked to the center of the chamber. "Show the planet's surface again," he said. The hologram changed, displaying XO3's raging storms and shifting gravity fields. "You call this planet the Maw, because it devours everything we send. But to humans, it looks familiar." "Familiar?" Representative Max's crystalline body sparkled with disbelief. "Your species has encountered something like this before." Lee smiled. "Parts of it, yes. The electrical storms, we have those on Earth, though smaller. Unstable gravity, we train for that in space. Aggressive life forms, Earth has plenty. We've evolved alongside dangers like these for millions of years. But the combination of all these factors," Dan started, "makes it extremely dangerous." "Yes," Lee finished. "But humans are good at dealing with danger. We don't just rely on advanced technology. We have backup systems, mechanical tools, and most importantly, we expect things to go wrong and plan for it." The council chamber grew quiet again, but this time with thoughtful silence. "Are you suggesting," Dan said slowly, "that humans might succeed where our best technology has failed?" "I'm suggesting that sometimes the best technology isn't the newest. Sometimes it's the technology that can't break, combined with people who know how to use it." Lee pulled out a simple compass from his pocket. "This still works when electronics fail. Humans never stopped making tools like this, even as we reached for the stars." The council members looked at each other. Some nodded slowly, others seemed unsure. "I have a team in mind," Lee said, "veterans of planetary exploration. They're not just scientists, they're survivors. They understand that sometimes you have to climb down into a cave instead of scanning it from orbit." High Counselor Dan stood, his silver skin reflecting the hologram's light. "The council will need to discuss this." But he paused, looking at the human with all four eyes. "Perhaps it's time we remembered that newer doesn't always mean better." As Lee left the chamber, he heard the council members talking excitedly. They had just realized something his species had known for a long time. Sometimes the hardest paths required the simplest solutions, and the courage to try them. Captain Tom Reed stood at the window of Earth Station 6, watching the massive colony ships pass by like silver whales in the black sea of space. Behind him, Three people sat around a metal table, studying holographic images of planet XO3. They were the best Earth had to offer, though they didn't look like much. So this is the planet that ate 17 alien expeditions. Kate looked up from her geology readings. Her weathered face showed more curiosity than fear. 20 years of climbing into active volcanoes had taught her that the most dangerous places often held the greatest discoveries. Marcus, the team's xenobiologist, pointed to a dark spot on the planet's surface. Look at these life form readings. The energy patterns are unlike anything in the galactic database. His eyes lit up with excitement. Years of studying Earth's most dangerous creatures had given him a unique perspective on alien life. The atmosphere is the real problem, Jack said, running his hand through his gray hair. The atmospheric specialist had spent his career flying through Earth's worst storms. Those electrical discharges are big enough to fry any advanced electronics. That's probably why the alien ships failed. Tom turned from the window. That's exactly why they chose us. He walked to the table and picked up an old-style compass. The Council thinks their ships failed because they were too advanced. All those fancy shields and AI systems couldn't handle the chaos. We're going to do it the old way. He opened a large metal case on the floor. Inside were basic tools: mechanical air pressure gauges, traditional climbing gear, magnetic compasses, and hand-powered backup systems. Everything here works without computers, just like the old days of exploration. Kate picked up a geological hammer, just like my first expedition to the Antarctic lava caves. She smiled, remembering. No fancy scanners, just eyes and experience. The aliens think we're crazy, Marcus said, checking his specimen containers. They can't understand why we'd want to get close to dangerous creatures when we could send robots. Because robots don't improvise, Jack replied, packing his mechanical weather instruments. They don't feel the wind change or smell the storm coming. They follow programs. Humans follow instincts. Tom spread out a paper map of their landing zone. The others gathered around, surprised by the old technology. We'll land here. He pointed to a relatively stable area. The old space shuttle designs will work better than modern ships. Simple heat shields, no energy fields. Once we're down, we use the cave systems for shelter. Just like the first Mars missions, Kate nodded. Basic but reliable. The Council's watching this mission closely, Tom continued. They think we're primitive because we still use tools like these. But they forgot something important. Their ancestors must have used simple tools too, before they got all their advanced technology. Marcus checked his protective suit. It was thick and heavy, not like the light energy suits the aliens used. Better to sweat than to die when your suit powers down, he said with a grin. We launch in 6 hours, Tom announced. The Council gave us 3 months to find a way to mine those rare elements. But first, we have to prove humans can survive where their best technology failed. Jack looked at the planet's image, spinning slowly above the table. You know what's funny? Back home, this would just be another tough expedition. Since when did being careful and prepared make us the crazy ones? Since the rest of the galaxy forgot that progress isn't just about making things more complicated, Tom answered. Sometimes it's about remembering what works, no matter how simple it seems. The team spent the next hours checking their gear, each item tested and retested. They knew that on XO3, there would be no backup ship, no rescue mission. They would survive by their wits, their experience, and their willingness to do what 17 other species considered impossible, to explore a deadly world with nothing but simple tools and human courage. As they prepared for launch, Tom looked at his team and smiled. They weren't the most advanced explorers in the galaxy, but they were exactly what this mission needed. Sometimes, being human meant being just primitive enough to survive. The old-style shuttle shook violently as it entered XO3's atmosphere. Warning lights flashed across the simple control panel, but Tom kept his hand steady on the manual controls. Outside, lightning bolts the size of mountains cut through the dark clouds. Hull temperature rising, Jack called out, watching a mechanical gauge. But the ceramic shields are holding. Those aliens would never believe we're flying without energy screens. Kate gripped her seat as the shuttle dropped suddenly in a gravity pocket. "Just like riding the rapids back home," she said through clenched teeth. "Except the rapids are in the air." The shuttle's metal frame groaned as Tom guided it through another lightning storm. Their path down looked like a dance between the deadly bolts. Where alien ships had tried to power through the storms with shields, the humans wove between the dangers like a leaf in the wind. "There," Marcus pointed through the reinforced window. "The cave system we spotted from orbit." Tom nodded, turning the shuttle toward a massive opening in the planet's rocky surface. Everyone braced for landing. "This is going to be rough." The landing gear extended with mechanical clicks. No electronics to fail. Tom brought the shuttle down hard on a relatively flat area near the cave mouth. The impact shook the whole ship, but the tough old design held together. "Well," Jack said, checking his instruments, "we just did what 17 alien species couldn't. We reached the surface." Tom unbuckled his harness. "Landing was the easy part. Now we find out if we can survive here." He pulled on his thick protective suit, checking the mechanical air filters. "Everyone remember the rules. No powered tools unless absolutely necessary. We do this the old way." The team gathered their basic equipment and approached the shuttle's airlock. Through the window, they could see XO3's surface for the first time. The ground was dark red, like rust, and the sky flashed constantly with purple lightning. Strange rock formations rose like twisted towers around them. "Atmosphere pressure reading is higher than Earth's," Jack said, looking at his gauge. "But the mix is breathable with filters." Kate tested the ground with a long metal pole. "Surface is stable here. Reminds me of volcanic rock." They stepped out onto the alien world one by one. Their boots left clear prints in the rusty dust, the first marks any living being had made on this surface. The air was thick and humid, making their protective suits feel even heavier. "Look at that," Marcus whispered, pointing to movement among the rocks. Small creatures, like a mix between crabs and shadows, scuttled away from the light. Life forms adapting to constant electrical storms. Fascinating. The team moved carefully toward the cave entrance, testing each step. The aliens had warned them about predators, but so far, nothing large appeared. The constant lightning lit up the landscape in purple flashes, creating moving shadows that played tricks on their eyes. "Base camp goes in the cave," Tom ordered, keeping his voice calm despite the incredible scene around them. "We use the natural rock for shelter, just like early humans did." They entered the cave mouth, their helmet lights showing smooth walls that seemed almost polished. Kate ran her hand along the surface, feeling its texture through her glove. "This isn't natural," she said suddenly. "These marks, they're too regular, too perfect." The team gathered around, examining the wall. In the beam of their lights, they could see subtle patterns carved into the rock, half hidden under years of mineral deposits. "Well," Tom said, his voice echoing in the cave, "looks like we're not the first visitors after all. But we might be the first ones to survive long enough to learn who was here before." Above them, the alien council watched through simple mechanical cameras. The team had set up. They saw humans doing something their species had forgotten long ago, surviving by understanding nature instead of trying to overpower it. The council members began to wonder if perhaps they had been wrong about humans being primitive. Maybe, just maybe, humans remembered something important that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. 3 days into their expedition, the human team had established a solid presence in the cave system they now called Base Hope. The constant rumble of thunder from outside echoed through the rocky corridors, but inside they were safe from the endless electrical storms. Kate stood before a wall covered in strange markings, carefully making sketches in her waterproof notebook. She didn't trust digital cameras, this close to the electrical storms, and her old-fashioned drawings had already revealed patterns that the alien scientists had missed in their scans. "Tom," she called out suddenly, "I think I'd found something important." The captain arrived quickly, followed by Marcus and Jack. They all carried simple chemical light sticks rather than powered lamps. In the soft green glow, Kate's discovery became clear. "Look at these lines," she said, tracing her finger along the wall. "They're not random decorations. They're diagrams, technical drawings, and they all point deeper into the canyon system." Tom studied the drawings carefully. "These look like circuit patterns, but they're carved into rock. How old are they?" Kate checked her mechanical measuring tools. "Based on the mineral growth, millions of years, at least." A loud crash of thunder made them all jump. Jack checked his weather instruments, frowning. "The storms are getting stronger." "But," he paused, looking at his readings again. "That's odd. The pattern is too regular." Marcus moved closer to the wall, his eyes wide. "Regular storms. Ancient machinery. What if they're connected? What if this planet isn't naturally dangerous?" The team looked at each other as understanding dawned. Tom pulled out their paper map, spreading it on a flat rock. "Look at the storm patterns we've recorded. They're not random. They're centered around specific points, like..." He traced lines on the map with his finger. "Like a defense system," Kate finished. "The whole planet is a machine." Just then, the ground shook beneath their feet. Deep in the cave, something hummed to life. The team rushed deeper into the tunnel, following the sound. Their light sticks cast dancing shadows on walls that were becoming more clearly artificial. They entered a large chamber and stopped in amazement. The walls were covered in metal panels, somehow untouched by time. In the center stood a column of dark material that pulsed with a faint blue light. "It's still working," Jack whispered. "After millions of years, it's still working." Kate approached the column carefully, studying the symbols etched into its base. These matched the drawings from the outer cave. "This isn't just machinery, it's a control center." Marcus pointed to a series of screens set into the wall. Unlike the alien technology that failed in the storms, these displays flickered to life as they approached. "Look at these readings. The storms, the gravity shifts, even the aggressive wildlife. It's all being controlled from here." "Not controlled," Tom said, examining a large diagram that lit up the chamber wall. "Generated. This planet isn't naturally hostile. Someone made it this way on purpose." Kate's hands moved over the ancient controls, her eyes bright with understanding. "The rare elements the Council wants. They're not the real treasure. This technology, it's beyond anything in the galaxy. But it's not complex. It's elegant, simple, built to last millions of years." That's why the alien ships failed, Jack realized. Their advanced technology couldn't interface with something this basic. They were looking for complex solutions to a simple problem. Tom touched the central column gently. "The aliens thought this planet was trying to keep everyone out, but maybe it was waiting for someone who could understand it. Someone who still remembered how to solve problems without relying on advanced technology." The chamber hummed around them, as if responding to their presence. Through the cave entrance, they could see the constant lightning had taken on a different pattern, almost like it was dancing. "We need to tell the Council," Tom said, his voice firm. "But first, we need to understand what we found. Because I don't think this is just a machine. I think it's a message, left by someone who knew that someday, a species would come along that remembered the value of simple solutions." The ancient control room hummed with quiet energy as Kate worked to understand its symbols. She had been at it for hours, comparing the wall markings to her notebook sketches. Tom watched her work while Jack and Marcus explored the nearby tunnels, mapping each new discovery. "It's a language," Kate said suddenly, looking up from her notes. "But not just any language. It's mathematical. Universal." She pointed to a series of repeated symbols. "Look, these patterns show up in nature. The spiral of galaxies, the growth of shells, even the way water moves in a stream." Tom leaned closer to the glowing symbols. "So whoever built this wanted to be understood by anyone who found it." "Not anyone," Kate corrected. "Someone who could recognize these patterns." someone who still studied the natural world instead of just trying to control it. Jack's voice crackled through their simple radio system. "Captain, you need to see this. We found another chamber." Tom and Kate followed the markers Jack and Marcus had left along the tunnel walls, simple reflective strips that caught their light sticks' glow. They found their teammates standing in a vast round room filled with what looked like testing equipment. "It's some kind of obstacle course," Marcus explained, shining his light across the chamber. "But not for testing strength or speed. Look at this." He approached what appeared to be a simple puzzle box. "Every challenge here can be solved without power. They're testing understanding, not technology." Jack nodded, checking his atmospheric readings out of habit. "The whole planet is like this. The storms aren't random. They form patterns. If you know what to look for, you can predict them. The aliens tried to force their way through. We watched the weather and found the gaps." "A test," Tom said quietly. "This whole planet is a test." Kate walked to the center of the chamber where a large circular platform stood. As she stepped onto it, soft lights began to glow along the floor, spreading outward in a spiral pattern. The team gathered around as symbols appeared in the air above them. "It's asking us to solve problems," Kate said, reading the mathematical patterns, "but not with computers or AI. It wants us to use—" She paused, smiling. "It wants us to use simple tools and basic principles." Over the next few hours, the team worked through the ancient challenges. They used water to balance weights, mirrors to redirect light, and basic mechanics to solve complex puzzles. Each solution triggered new patterns in the chamber's design. The aliens couldn't solve these, Marcus realized as they worked. Not because they weren't smart enough, but because they'd forgotten how to solve problems without advanced technology. Tom watched as Kate used a simple lever system to unlock another sequence. Their ships had AI that could calculate 1,000,000 solutions per second, but they couldn't figure out how to use a pulley. "That's the real test," Jack said, understanding dawning in his eyes. "It's not about finding species with the most advanced technology. It's about finding ones that remember their roots. Ones that know how to survive when technology fails." The chamber filled with a soft blue light as they completed the final challenge. New doors opened around them, revealing corridors they hadn't seen before. But these weren't rough caves. They were smoothly finished halls lined with metal and stone. "We did it," Kate whispered. "We proved we understand." Tom looked at his team with pride. "The council thought we were primitive, because we still used simple tools. They didn't realize that remembering our past makes us stronger, not weaker." The walls around them pulsed with light, as if the ancient structure was coming fully awake for the first time in millions of years. Ahead, they could see more chambers, more discoveries waiting to be made. "Well," Tom said, checking his compass out of habit, "shall we go see what else these builders left for someone smart enough to keep things simple?" The team moved forward together, their basic tools ready, their minds open to whatever mysteries waited ahead. They had passed the test not because they were the most advanced species, but because they had never forgotten the importance of understanding the basics. The newly opened corridors led the team deeper into the planet's artificial heart. Their footsteps echoed on metal floors that hadn't felt a living touch in millions of years. The walls glowed with a soft light that seemed to follow their movement, as if the entire structure was aware of their presence. "These builders," Marcus said, studying marks on the walls, "they weren't just advanced. They were smart about how they used their technology." He pointed to what looked like a simple hand pump next to a sealed door. "Look, mechanical backup systems everywhere. No chance of getting trapped if power fails." Tom nodded as he worked the pump, and the door slid open smoothly. They built everything to last. No complex parts to break down. The door opened into a vast chamber that made them all stop in amazement. The room stretched farther than their lights could reach, filled with rows of crystal containers. Each one held what looked like tools, machines, and devices of incredible variety. "It's a vault," Kate breathed, approaching the nearest crystal case. They left their technology here, waiting. Jack checked his atmospheric readings out of habit. Air's clean in here. These preservation systems must have been running for millions of years. He tapped one of the crystal cases gently. But look how simple the seals are. Just basic pressure locks. No electronics to fail. The team spread out, examining the ancient treasury of technology. But unlike the complex quantum computers and energy weapons the Council races used, these tools were different. They were elegant in their simplicity, built to be understood and repaired by anyone who understood basic scientific principles. "Look at this," Kate called out, standing before a larger display. The others joined her as text appeared in the air above them, using the same mathematical language they'd decoded earlier. "It's their story," Kate said, reading the symbols. "The builders, they weren't destroyed. They chose to leave. But first, they wanted to make sure their knowledge would be found by the right kind of species." Tom studied the floating text. They wanted someone who wouldn't just take their technology and make the same mistakes they saw other civilizations make. Marcus pointed to another section of text. They watched younger species destroy themselves with technology they weren't ready for. Advanced weapons, AI that got out of control, power sources they couldn't handle safely. So they created this vault, Jack realized, and all those tests leading to it. They weren't looking for the most advanced civilization. He smiled. They were looking for one that was advanced enough to reach the stars, but wise enough to remember its roots. Kate walked slowly along the rows of crystal cases, reading the labels. "These aren't weapons or power sources. They're tools for exploration, for learning, for building. Technology that works with nature instead of trying to overcome it. Just like the storms outside," Tom said. "The aliens tried to force their way through with shields and energy fields. We watched the patterns and found safe paths." He touched one of the crystal cases gently. "We proved we could understand their message." The air hummed around them as more lights came on, revealing the true size of the vault. It stretched for miles in every direction, a library of technology built to help a species grow wisely, not just powerfully. "The Council needs to see this," Tom said, looking around at the ancient treasury. "But they need to understand what it means. The builders didn't leave this for the most advanced civilization. They left it for one that would use it wisely." Kate nodded, still reading the mathematical text. "They left it for a species that kept their balance. Advanced enough to reach the stars, but grounded enough to remember where they came from." The vault's lights pulsed gently around them, as if agreeing. In the distance, they could hear the storm's thunder, but it seemed different now. Less like chaos, and more like applause. The great hall of the Galactic Council was silent as Tom finished presenting their findings. The holographic displays showed images of the vault, the ancient texts, and the simple but powerful technology they had discovered. Behind him, Kate, Marcus, and Jack stood proudly in their worn expedition suits. High Counselor Dan rose slowly from his seat, all four eyes fixed on the human team. "You mean to tell us," he said carefully, "that the planet's defenses were not natural obstacles, but tests. Tests that our most advanced ships failed, but your primitive equipment passed." "With respect, Counselor," Tom replied, "they weren't testing for advancement. They were testing for balance." He held up the old compass that had helped guide them through the storms. "The builders wanted to find a species that hadn't forgotten its roots." Kate stepped forward, activating another hologram that showed the mathematical language they had decoded. "The builders saw civilizations destroy themselves by advancing too quickly, losing touch with basic principles. They left their legacy for a species that could grow wisely, not just rapidly." The council chamber erupted in excited discussion. Representatives from all 17 advanced species spoke at once, their voices mixing in a chorus of different languages. Tom waited patiently until High Counselor Dan raised his hand for silence. "The rare elements we detected," Dan said, "they were never the real treasure, were they?" Marcus shook his head. "They were part of the test. The builders knew that only a species that still understood basic mining and geology would realize that the element readings were too perfect, too regular. While our ships tried to scan through the storms, Jack added, we watched the weather patterns and found natural paths through them. The builders wanted someone who could work with nature, not just try to overpower it. A new figure stepped onto the council floor. Ambassador Lee, who had first suggested sending humans to XO3. My fellow council members, he said, what the human team has found isn't just technology. It's a warning and a gift. Tom nodded, pressing a button on his simple remote. A new hologram appeared, showing the builders' final message. They left because they saw younger species making the same mistakes, relying too heavily on complex technology, forgetting the importance of understanding basic principles. But humans, Kate said, we never completely let go of our past. We reached the stars, but we kept our simple tools. We built AI, but we remember how to think for ourselves. We have power plants, but we still know how to make fire. The council members looked at each other, many nodding slowly in understanding. Their own civilizations had largely abandoned simpler technologies, considering them primitive and obsolete. The builders left us their knowledge, Tom continued, not because we're the most advanced, but because we proved we could use it wisely. They want us to share it with species ready to learn the same lesson. High Counselor Dan stepped down from his platform, approaching the human team. We thought your species was primitive because you held on to old ways, he said softly. We never considered that keeping those skills made you stronger, not weaker. The greatest test, Tom replied, wasn't surviving the planet's dangers. It was proving we could balance progress with wisdom. The council chamber filled with a new kind of silence, not the tense quiet of before, but a thoughtful pause. One by one, the representatives stood, offering the traditional gesture of respect in their various cultures. Humanity has given us more than just access to advanced technology, Dan announced. They've reminded us of something we had forgotten, that true progress isn't about abandoning the past, but building on it wisely. Outside the council chamber's windows, ships of all sizes and designs moved through space. But now, mixed among the sleek modern vessels, older ship designs could be seen. The council races were already beginning to remember that sometimes the simplest solution was the best. The human team stood proudly as the council voted unanimously to begin learning from the builders' legacy. They had done more than explore a dangerous planet. They had helped the galaxy remember that courage isn't just about facing danger. Sometimes, the greatest courage is remembering where you came from, even as you reach for the stars.